Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today is going to be chopping block update number 2. It's also going to be the final chopping block update. I did pull in 74 items into my chopping block, you guys. I'll link that video up above. And then I did an update of 30 of the 74 items a month ago. So this whole set of chopping block items was all stuff that in my declutter videos at the very end of the year I wasn't sure about and I wanted to make decisions on. I will follow up with, I probably won't do this in subsequent years, but I had built such a big collection in 2023 just testing a bunch of stuff, and it had really been like the first full year that I had done anything like that before. And so just with the accumulation of products, I think that you have to figure out how to train yourself to decide what products you like and that are going to make it into your permanent collection. I was just like putting everything in there. So I think I have a newfound sense of how I want to treat makeup, or the makeup that stays in my collection, and what goes into reference for the things that I may talk about but that I don't want to personally use every single day, and then the stuff that I just need to make the decision to pass along to other people, as opposed to just holding onto it for the sake of holding onto it. So I thought I would do this video putting everything on. That's how I did the chopping block update number 1. I have already filmed this video and I hated it. It was awful. So I'm here refilming this, and originally I didn't put any of the makeup on camera, but I do want to do that today so you guys can see the stuff that I'm really going to keep and maybe like why I decided to keep it. So let's hop into it, you guys. I want to start off with eyeshadows. I actually held on to a decent number of eyeshadow palettes, and I didn't go over any of the palettes in the first update video, but there's actually 2 here that I haven't tested, but I made the decision to keep because I think I want to reference them in future, I don't know, years, or testing against new formulas. Those are the Lethal Cosmetics palettes that I had in my collection. And I want to say these came from some sort of set. This was Momento. This is in very similar packaging. This one was in Destiny. Having tested only these, I wasn't the biggest fan of the formula overall. I just felt like the shadows were a little powdery. I kind of felt like the shimmers were also a little powdery. They weren't super intense or light reflecting, but I did decide to hold on to them. I'm gonna go into this one right here. Just for the simple sake of being able to compare against other formulas. I've never tested anything else. It seems like quite a few number of people that I watch really like Lethal Cosmetics. So I guess I kind of want to get a feel for what they offer. Is this just a different formulation, it being like it comes from this particular collection? Anyway, I would love to hear in the comments below what you guys think of the Lethal Cosmetics formula. It's not bad, it's just, it's a little bit powdery, I guess. They weren't the longest lasting shadows that I had tried, and I guess the shimmer formula wasn't amazing. Like, it didn't knock my socks off. Let me swatch one of these shades. They're just really powdery. They're not bad, they're thin, and they're decently light reflecting. They're just on the powdery side. I want to say this one's probably my favorite of the 2. This one is Momento. The other one's kind of like a pinky purplish color story. And I really like this duochrome shimmer down here, but I don't like that deep purple in the outer corner. I would not say it's a color story thing for me. I reach for pinks all the time. Anyway, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on maybe mostly the shimmer formula. I'm gonna do something pretty simple and quick with the eyeshadow look. It's just like, there's a lot of fallout with this. Not that that's necessarily bad. It was just, yeah, the longevity wasn't really there, and the powderiness, which I keep mentioning. I get so much more fallout and powder with this than a lot of my other indie brand shadows. Literally in my hair at the current moment. It kind of gets everywhere. It's all in my eyelashes. I just don't think this is my favorite shimmer formula. I kind of think that's what it comes down to. I think the moral of the story with these particular palettes is, it's not that they're terrible, they're not that stick-to-itive kind of formula that a lot of indie brand shadows are. I don't find myself reaching for these because of the shimmer formula over some of my other indie brands. But again, gonna hold on to these because I want to see how they compare against other palettes. They just have a new release come out. I'm not sure I'm gonna pick that up, but the point is, I'm sure I will test the Lethal Cosmetics eyeshadow formula again at some point, so I wanna have these to compare against them. So some of the decisions that I'm gonna make, you guys are gonna see, it's about comparisons or keeping in reference, and then some of them it's just gonna be about decluttering because they don't have a singular purpose in my collection. I probably won't talk about them, or I'm not gonna use them in my personal life. That brings me to my next 2 eyeshadow palettes. So these are from Viseart. These were from the Lotus collection. They came with 3. It was the Rosea Lotus, the Water Lotus, and then the Sakura Lotus. So the Water Lotus, as you can see, was like a minty color story. I have mentioned several times on my channel and in my ranking videos that this formula was just more on the powdery side. I didn't find it to be as long lasting or as blendable or as good a quality as a lot of their other shadows. And I have a decent sized Viseart collection. These shimmers are also super lackluster. Let me like get a decent swatch. They're like powdery and they had virtually no light reflection. That's not a bad swatch. It's just a bad swatch if you get my drift. And without this being like a standout formula, mint is not something that I reach for. I would reach for it mostly in the shimmers and not necessarily in the mattes, but I don't like the formula. This one is the Sakura Lotus, which was a purpley color story. Again, super powdery, not intensely pigmented, very underwhelming. This shade doesn't really brighten for me. It just kind of doesn't show up. The only one that I held on to was the Rosea Lotus because I liked it a little bit more. It's just more neutral. It's more something that I could see myself traveling with. Well, I have traveled with this. It's not bad. It just doesn't last a long time on my eyes. It fades very quickly. I just don't know that these were formulated in the same place that Viseart usually sends their shadows out to be formulated. I've said that once, I'm going to stick to it. So I'm gonna hold on to this one and I'm going to just fully declutter these two, pass them along to somebody else. I'm not going to keep them in reference. There's no reason. I consume Viseart for my own personal use. I did feature that particular collection on its own, but I probably typically wouldn't. They've come out with other palettes since then and I have not featured them on my channel. So I'll pass those along. And then the other two that came from a set, and this also might have had 3, were the Obsessions palettes from Huda Beauty. I think these are still made. I don't know. Maybe these aren't made anymore. Maybe these were limited edition. This was the caramel one. And then I got the chocolate brown one. They're so freaking warm toned. I like this one more. I originally bought this collection for the caramel because I was really into warm toned shades, but man, they are warm. They're just full orange is all they are. They're just so dry at the current moment. Maybe that orange one, but this one right here is like fully dry. This one in the corner that's like a cream is kind of dried out too. I have also consumed the creamy Obsessions palettes that just released. I can't say that they're my favorite. I don't think I'm a big fan of the Obsessions palettes in general. I much prefer her larger palettes. And this is just too warm for what I'm reaching for. If it was like fully great quality and was still swatching nicely, I would probably keep it. But yeah, it's a hit or miss. I'm like, what's creamy still and like what's dried out? So there's no sense in me keeping these. Again, every other shimmer here is kind of dry. So I'm not gonna keep them for my own personal use. I'm gonna declutter both of these. Let's keep moving on with the eyeshadows. So I had one from Odin's Eye. This was the Alva 2 palette, the Mini Sky palette. And I went back and forth on this because I think it still performs really well. I really like the color story here. I was having fun with it. I just think that it's boring. I don't think it offers anything extra for me. I was pretty much like getting very similar looks every time I was playing with it because it's kind of one all over shade, then one deeper shade, and then I was like mixing with these two shimmers. I mean, I think you could do different things with this. It's just, it's not my favorite Odin's Eye formula, and yeah, I don't think it's my favorite Odin's Eye shimmer formula either. So I'm just not gonna reach for this one over the other Odin's Eye palettes that have come out more recently that I actually think are better formulated than this one. So I'm gonna pass this one along. I'm going to declutter it. I think there's only 2 eyeshadow palettes left. And these were the ones from House Labs. These were the eye libraries. She came out with volume 1, the super neutrals, and then volume 2, the super neutrals. So one was more warm toned and one was cool toned. Here's the warm toned one. I retested these. The mattes are pretty awful. They're infused with a ton of skincare. They're more desaturated. The thing is, if you want decent pigmentation with these, I feel like for me and my preference, I have to dig really hard into the pan, and you can get it. I just use a super dense brush with these to build up the pigment the way that I like my eyeshadows, but I have other formulas that I would prefer to use that don't require this much work. The reason that I'm gonna hold on to these in my actual collection is because of these bio glitters. I think the bio glitters are very unique, and all of these shades are actually infused from the back, so they're done kind of in bulk. I just think this formula is really nice. I'm actually a fan of bio glitters. These have like micro fine gold sparkles. They're really pretty. They are very sparkly though, because they're a bio glitter. They do create quite a bit of fallout. They're just stunning on the eyes though. And I only have like one other kind of bio glitter in my collection, and it's a single, and I love it. I think that they're a kind of an underrated formula overall. It's just holistically for me, this is not a palette that I would reach for on an everyday basis, but I like the bio glitters. I think about the bio glitters. They're distinct enough for me to say that I would think about using this palette just for those. They really are stunning, you guys. They're just foiled and lovely and quite sparkly. Anyway, I am gonna hold on to these, especially if she decides to come out with something else, then I can compare against these. Not that I do a ton of comparisons on my channel, but I do occasionally. But I will use those bio glitters for personal use. So these two palettes are gonna stay. I wanna go into mascara next before I put on my foundation. The only mascara that I left, because I went through so many other ones in my original chopping block video, was the one from Gucci. I don't know what this is called. I don't think it's actually on the packaging. I'm pretty sure they only have one mascara in their collection. This one I put in the chopping block because it's not intensely pigmented. It's a nice mascara, but I don't think it's my favorite, so it's not one that I find myself like reaching for over and over. The reason that I'm gonna hold on to this one is because it's the most buildable mascara I've probably ever used. It builds on itself like nothing I've ever seen, and not just to the point where it like gets crunchy and you have to stop. It genuinely will build and build and look more intense. The thing is, I think I have to build or want to build to get to the intensity that I like, where some other formulas and other favorites of mine, I don't have to do that with. I also think that having this mascara for the purposes of maybe I reference it for a Gucci try-on or something like that would be nice. I also don't hate this mascara. And I do think that even though mascaras can be as pricey as any other makeup item, I don't ever feel guilty about keeping a mascara and letting it expire as opposed to passing it on. It's kind of like lip products in that unless you're giving it to a family member who really wants it, it's going so close to an open part of your face that I feel like, you know, if it doesn't work for me, I don't have to hold on to it indefinitely. It'll expire itself in 6 months and then I can throw it away. So generally as like a makeup category, I don't feel bad about kind of keeping them if I don't absolutely love them. I actually also want to mention, I think this is probably one of my favorite luxury brand mascaras. In my experience, or at least the mascaras that I have tested, I haven't had the best of luck with luxury brand mascaras. I find that a lot of them are on the lighter side, just not as intense as I like. And I think this one has like the real potential to be like nicely intense, mostly lengthening, not a huge ton of volume, not a huge ton of pigmentation. It makes my lashes look thinner. I don't necessarily love that. Again, in context, it's probably one of my favorite luxury brand mascaras, so I'm gonna hold on to this one. I don't have any foundations in this video. I did a foundation a day for 42 days series on my channel where I retested all the foundations. So nothing went into not its own chopping block video. So I'm just gonna throw on really quickly the Lancome Tint Idole Ultra Wear Care and Glow Foundation. Yeah, I'm just gonna go in really lightly with the foundation today because it's not at all about the foundation. There are a ton of concealers though, a ton that released last year and a ton that went into the original chopping block. So there was even more maybe this time around that I tested. So many decisions to make as it relates to concealers because maybe the biggest category that I don't compromise on, if that makes sense. A poor performing concealer is not something I want to reach for on an everyday basis. It's also a category where I never want to feel guilty about not using something. So I've gotten better about like concealer doesn't work, you're out. I have hollow under eyes and for me, it's like self-consciousness kind of comes into play. And the more silicone based or even looking like filling under the under eyes that concealer looks, the more I like it. But it can't sink in, it can't dry me out. I would rather reach for something more radiant than mattifying, as it were, under the under eyes, Whereas like with my foundations, I would rather reach for something more mattifying than dewy. So I have 6 concealers here. It was pretty split down the middle for me in terms of like what I decided to keep and then keep for reference. So this might shock some of you guys, but this is the Haus Labs concealer. I personally don't like it. It doesn't work for me in the same way that the foundation doesn't. It's thicker on my under eyes and I don't think it sinks in. I don't think it settles or creases. It's just thick. And I find that it's a little bit sticky of a formula under my under eyes. It just feels very heavy. I find that with the foundation too. And both of these I feel like are fan favorites. They are really, really sticky. Just more sticky than I like. Even though I just said like I like a radiant finish, I don't like when it like remains kind of heavy and sticky on the under eyes. And I feel this. I feel it the way that I feel the foundation. For me personally, it just doesn't work. I think that this has a relevance though in my collection because I talk about Haus Labs. So I'm gonna hold on to this for reference, but I'm not gonna keep it in my permanent collection. Same thing with the All Hours concealer from YSL. This one is in the shade LC1, which is just too yellow. I find that the All Hours foundation from YSL, even though that's one of my holy grails, it's one of my favorite foundations in my collection. I don't talk about it a whole heck of a lot, but it also runs very yellow. I feel like this is a thick formula for me too. It's not similar to the Haus Labs in terms of formulation. This is kind of a much drier, non-sticky formula. It's not dry, but it's drier. It doesn't have any like stick-to-itiveness like the other one does. That's not really the right word there. But anyway, the point is it's just a much softer, silkier formula, but it's heavier on my under eyes. It also just doesn't do anything extremely special for me. It doesn't perfect my under eyes. My favorite ones kind of fill in the hollows. Not that they're silicone based, but they kind of perform in that way where they look like they're kind of filling in the holes of my under eyes. This one just doesn't do that. I think it like sits flat on my skin. It doesn't crease or fade or anything. It's just not spectacular. I want spectacular when it comes to concealers. So for the time being, I'm gonna hold on to this in reference because it's YSL. I don't know, I kind of feel like I paid more money and I'm not ready to totally declutter it in case I end up talking about it. But for reference, you guys, I go through that whole stack of stuff and I declutter everything in time to be able to pass products along to family and friends. I don't keep anything in there for very long if I don't end up referencing it in like the months after I put it in there. Anyway, the next one that I'm not gonna hold on to is the one from Makeup by Mario, the Surreal Skin Awakening Concealer. I don't find a love for it either. It doesn't smooth out my under eyes. It's not perfecting. It's not bad. It's just not special. There's nothing here that makes me fall head over heels. I like this more than the foundation. Again, not an exceptionally beautiful looking concealer under my under eyes. And I have a ton of other concealers that don't get enough use that I would love to pan or just use every day because I love those more. This one isn't a love for me, so I'm going to put that one in reference as well. So all 3 of those are going into reference. The last 3 I'm gonna hold on to. So the Makeup Forever HD Skin, this one is in the shade 13N. I'm reading the wrong number. This one I actually really do like. It's nicer under the under eyes. I don't love this shade though. So, you know, the neutral with this yellowish kind of orangish warm tinge is not my favorite, but I like the way that this performs. I feel like this one is longer lasting than the other ones with a bit more coverage, so you don't have to go in with as much product. So I actually really like that one. That's one that I think about using personally. And then this one from IT Cosmetics is the Bye Bye Dark Spots Serum Concealer. I also really like this in Light Neutral 22. It's the only IT Cosmetics like complexion product that I've ever gotten along with. But this is actually really nice. It's hydrating on the under eyes. It's thin, but you can build this up to medium coverage without creasing. It's the first IT Cosmetics concealer I've ever gotten along with. I do enjoy this one personally. The final one is the one from Tower 28. I want to say this is the, something serum concealer maybe. This is an EP, which is too deep of a shade for me. I think a lot of people really enjoy this concealer. I personally, this is the one I'm going to use today, just because I'm choosing to, I guess. I don't love this. I'm not head over heels about this formula. The reason is because the more I put on, or like the amount I could put on with a lot of my other concealers, this will crease. It will settle into my fine lines. That's a big no-no for me. Anything that settles in is just a goner. I'm not going to keep that in my collection, no matter it's any other redeeming qualities. But what I've found with this concealer is if I go in with like just this amount right here and on the outer corner, and I don't kind of like sweep it under my under eyes like I do with a lot of other concealers, I can prevent it from sinking in. And I like the amount of coverage that it gives. That's really nice. I like that it's long lasting too. I like the consistency. It just doesn't feel heavy. It's very lightweight under the under eyes. Less is more, and then I can get away with it. Prior to it going into my chopping block and going, okay, I'm gonna give this like a full fair shot. I need to figure out how to use this product. I went in heavy the first time and was like, okay, let me just try one dot. Went in with one dot and I was like, oh, that's the trick right there. Which is not something that I'm used to. And also, I don't necessarily love to make a product work for me all the time, especially when it comes to concealer. Some other products like blush, I feel like, okay, I can make it work because I like the finish of it. Concealer is just kind of one of those that I feel less affinity to do that with a concealer. But again, I'm going to hold on to this one in my permanent collection because I think that I like the way that it looks under my under eyes. I feel like it's kind of filling. I like the coverage and the longevity. Just less is more. And maybe that's a tip for you guys. If you found this settles or creases or whatever, try going in with a single dot or just a lot less product than you would think to go in with, because I think this is a pretty decent amount of coverage. Try that and see if it works for you. I had 2 powders left, like setting powders left, that I was testing. So the first one was the Say Dewy Powder. What is this? The Air Set Radiant Loose Setting Powder. I don't actually find that this is overly radiant at all. I don't find that it has any real sheen or glow to it. I feel like it's a decently mattifying powder. It's just not overly long lasting. This particular product doesn't upset me, but it doesn't excite me either. And I just don't want to grab for powders unless they're doing something for me that's locking down my makeup really, or if it's a very nice finishing powder and it's overly blurring. I think this is a middle of the road powder actually. I don't think I remembered it at all, and that's why I wanted to put it in the chopping block. It's not bad. It's not great. I honestly, again, with powders, don't like to really compromise. I don't get excited about powders unless they're exceptional, basically. Especially being combo oily, it's one of the things I get up and worry about every day. What's the weather like outside? Am I gonna sweat immensely and not be wearing any makeup by 11 o'clock? So powders for me are a higher priority in terms of category in makeup. So this one I'll probably hold on into reference because it's a powder, and if I talk about Say in any way, I'd like to bring this back out, but I'm not going to use it personally. Again, probably won't hold on to that for a super long time. I can definitely pass it on. The one that I am going to hold on to is my little mini of the Huda Beauty Easy Baby Bake Loose Setting Powder. I don't love this packaging. It's so freaking annoying. I wish I hadn't gotten like the small version because it comes with the puff inside. I don't necessarily love the puff, and I don't think you pick up a whole heck of a ton of product. I'm gonna use the puff anyway. The puff is fine. It's just not my preference. It's okay. Now you know this powder has a ton of hype. I like it for blurring. I want to say that it's probably most popular for blurring, or at least that's what I like it for. It's tremendously blurring. It's quite beautiful without looking heavy on the skin. I just think for oily skinned people, it doesn't offer like extreme longevity. Well, at least on me, I don't think it's like overly setting. I think it sets just for a pretty short period of time on my skin. And then I can get pretty dewy pretty fast with this. I just think it's soft, and I think it's very blurring on the skin. I think that's what's really nice about this product. So if I'm looking for less longevity and more blur, then I think this is good. So I like it. I wish this was fragrance free. Every time I bust this out, I feel like I'm spraying perfume on my face. This is an old version. I don't know if she does fragrance free now, but this is like really, really strong. I like it again. I just realized, oh, it's blurring that it gives me, that it does really well. And that's why I want to hold on to it, not because it overly locks my makeup down. But that's good, that if I understand my makeup and what certain products are really good for, I feel good about that. I think my biggest category was probably bronzers slash contours. So there's quite a bit here, and I ended up making decisions to declutter most of them. I'm gonna put on two now that I've decided to keep. So the first one was the Tarte Man-Eater Bronzing Stick. It's the Silk Stick in Dusk. This is such an incredibly creamy formula. It's just a really, I don't know, orangey color on me. It's not as orange as some of the ones that I use. I think I did it a little bit too low on this side. I really just enjoy this formula like quite a bit. I think though I prefer it more like on the cheeks than on the forehead because it does come out pretty warm toned. And if you've heard me talk about like my preference in bronzers are really neutral or very, very light shades, or even kind of a pinkish reddish tone at the current moment. I really don't care for anything overly orange. I think though you can really sheer this out, and that's why I like it. And I think it's decent enough for me to actually really enjoy reaching for it and potentially even like using this product up, not just keeping it because I like the formula, but then forgetting about it. I like how much I can really go in with a light hand with this product. So I'm gonna hold on to this one. The other one that I'm gonna hold on to is the e.l.f. Halo Glow. I don't think I really enjoyed this contour shade in Fair Light originally. I should take that back. I don't think I disliked it. I just think I wasn't over the moon about it when it first came out. And then in comparing it against other products, I realized it's kind of a lot better than a lot of them. It's really easy to blend in. It's a decent shade too, much better than a lot of its counterparts that are more bronzers than they are contours. The only one that I feel like I have tried that's an actual contour shade was the Flower Beauty wands that came out. I think they did the best right alongside e.l.f. in making an actual contour wand that was for fair to light skin tones. And I think this one does that. I actually really enjoyed this more as I was testing it, so I'm gonna hold on to it. But speaking of its counterparts, the liquid contour from Milani in the shade Honey 01, not a product that I wanna keep. It's not overly warm, I would say. It's just not a contour shade. And there were so many other formulas that I would prefer to reach for over this. And it's not a packaging that can withstand keeping it for too long. It's already like kind of icky. And I promise you, I have not used this that much. So this is something that I would like to pass along right now to see if someone else would prefer to use this. Again, not necessarily too warm. It's probably just too deep at this current moment. It's not a favorite of mine, and it's definitely not what I would consider a contour for fair skin tone, so I'm gonna pass that along to somebody. And I'm also going to pass this along. It was the Solar Paint from Glossier. I picked up their liquid bronzer that's essentially the cloud paint version for bronzing shades, and I love that. I have been thoroughly enjoying that. It's very neutral, it's very light, it's a very easy formula to work with. I think this was a really good formula. It's so smooth and creamy and lightweight. I like this doe foot applicator. It feels cool on the skin, just too warm of a shade for me. It's just not what I'm reaching for right now. And if you're looking to warm up your complexion, I think this is actually a great product that I don't hear anyone talking about. I personally just think it's a shade thing for me, so I'm gonna pass this one along to somebody else. Let's move on to the rest of the cream products. So I have one from Rose Inc. This one is the cream bronzer in Parrot K. Also a pretty darn warm shade. I also go back and forth with this product because it dries out the top layer really, really easily. You can warm it back up if you kind of move the product around, but that's basically orange on my skin. And even though it's a lighter tone than say the Milani, it's just too orange for me. So I think there's still some life left in this, so I'm gonna pass this along to really somebody else that might like the shade a little bit more. And very similarly, the one from Soul Body. A lot of people loved this product. It is very easy to work with. It's a cream to powder formula. It feels like summer in a little canister. It still feels creamy. I've had this for a little while. It's just too warm. That's all it is. It's just too orange. By the time it gets to my cheeks, it looks way more orange than maybe just a swatch on the back of my hand. So there's so much freaking product in here. I'm pretty sure like it goes all the way to the bottom of this component. So I need to pass this along to someone with a smaller collection that might like the shade more than me. I kind of feel like it's a little sad to let that product go because so many people like it. It's just, again, I need to be real. Also, kind of along the same lines of everybody kind of likes this formulation is the one from Physicians Formula that I have. This was from a collection that it was limited edition. It no longer exists. It was the Butter Donut collection or Donut collection, something like that. And it came, I bought the whole collection. It came in like a tower and it came with a bunch of different bronzers in different kind of tones. And they had little oversprays of little donuts and they smell delicious like donuts. Actually, this one smells like hot chocolate. And I only kept this one because it's the most neutrally shade. Oh, this is like the softest freaking thing ever. It is so freaking soft. It's just too orange when it gets to my cheeks. Let me do a comparison. Let me show you one that's similarly light, but that just works for me. Here's the one from Kaleidos. And mind you, this is not a bronzer. This is one of their mono blushes in the shade Hot Shot, but it has kind of a lighter, I want to say even kind of like pinkish tinge. And you can see the neutrality or just the undertone difference between the two, where this one is so perfect on my fair skin and this one just comes out too orange when I sweep it all over. So even though it's more neutral than I think a lot of the Physicians Formula products are, by the way, this one is in sprinkles, it's just too orange for me. But the Kaleidos Mono Blush, I just learned that I absolutely love this product. This is a product that is kind of a hidden gem for me because it's a blush and not a bronzer. And I looked at it immediately upon getting it and was like, okay, this is definitely something that I would use normally as a bronzer. And so I tried it that way and I was like, do I wanna, or do I wanna use some of my other bronzers? Then I realized, wow, this is actually a treat for my personal preferences. This is perfect, it's perfect. I was glad that I had held on to it as a bronzer shade. So I'm gonna keep that. The last three I'm gonna let go. This one from Juvia's Place is the cream bronzer, I guess, in Buttercream. This is kind of a thicker whipped texture. It's almost grainy. It feels pretty grainy when you dip your finger in. And I love the shade on this. Very neutral, almost like a kind of contoury shade, I think, for fair skin. Maybe a tad bit of warmth. It's nice. It has sparkles in it. Even looking at the product, there's little sparkles in it. I didn't know that it was supposed to look like that. Maybe it said Radiant Finish and then it didn't indicate that there was like little sparkles in it, but it does have sparkles in it. So once this actually dries down on the forehead, it kind of looks too sheeny for me. I don't mind sheen on my cheeks. I just don't care for it on my forehead. So again, I love the shade. I just know myself and I will not reach for this product to put it in one area over the other. When I'm grabbing for a bronzer, I want it to work for everywhere that I'd like to bronze. I don't have a use for this. I'm gonna let that go. And then one I've had for quite a bit of time is the Milani Silky Matte Bronzer. This one is in Sunlight. This is a really popular product. People have liked this and talked about this for a long time, but you guys, this is hard. This is a very, very hard formula in the pan. And maybe people really like stuff like this because it's just more buildable and not super intense. I just never found it like an extremely silky formula in comparison to some of my other really silky formulas, like Physicians Formula. Like that's very silky. And not that this is bad, but just that it doesn't like strike me as the most silky formula ever. I think it's a little hard pressed in the pan. The bottom line is this just looks too orange when it gets to my cheeks. It's not bad when you swatch it, but it looks like an orange stripe. Much more so than a lot of the other bronzers that I love that look more neutral on me. So I'm gonna pass that one along. This final one I feel very similarly about. I feel like a lot of people like this. This is the Soft Radiance bronzing powder from Glowish in 01 Light. I think, again, a lot of people like this because it's very buildable. It's not extremely pigmented. It's kind of hard pressed again in the pan. Don't necessarily think I gravitate towards like really hard pressed products, but this looks super orange on me. Like really orange on the cheeks. Like once I actually get pigmentation out of it, it's really orange. Plus, I think she's just announced that she's getting rid of the Glowish line, so there's no need for me to hold on to this for any kind of reference. So I'm gonna let that one go. Ton of different blushes that I have next, you guys. Way more than bronzers, I just now realized. And that makes sense because I've consumed so many. And none of these at all surprised me that they went into the chopping block, but I think I've cut these in about half. So I'm just gonna randomly grab them. I have the Ulta Beauty Too Cheeky Blush Stick. This is really nice. It's in the shade Charmed. And it's got like gold color or sparkle kind of infused in the pigmentation. It's a cream to powder formula. It comes one of those little things on the top. I like it. I like the shade. I like the formula. It's not stand out to me though, not in terms of formulation and in shade. I have other stick formulas that I like more, that I think are like easier to work with, that dry down a little bit more. So I definitely can pass this along to somebody. It was nice, but it's not a favorite of mine. Same thing with this one. This is the BYO blush oil from Youthforia in Turn Up the Sunshine. This performs really well, and it's a very interesting, very unique product. It's an oil that's a stain. So it goes on like this. You can really move the pigmentation around so you can blend it in nicely without it drying or looking patchy. It works. It works for what it is. It stains, it lasts all day, but it's really sticky. It's the kind that your hair will get into for sure. It's nice, again, unique, works well. I just won't reach for this over other products. I just will keep ignoring this. I have not used this since I tested it. So, I mean, that kind of tells you something. I would just rather reach for stuff that's less complicated to work with, but still gives me a similar effect. So I'm gonna pass that one along. I'm also gonna pass this one along. The Charlotte Tilbury Cheek to Chic in Pillow Talk. It's not a formula thing. This is more buildable. It has a nice sheen to it. It's a shade thing for me. I mean, I don't think I ever noticed it before until recently. Like how much gray cast this is in Pillow Talk. Like depending upon how it sits on my cheeks, it can cast gray. And I find that with shades that are paler in blushes that have sheen to them. This used to be one of my favorite blushes, and so I never really noticed that until I started my YouTube channel, and I've been testing so many different blush formulas. Now I realize like the difference or distinction between certain shades on me and not. It's not every shade will work. It's not every formula will work. And I can tell that this just casts a funny gray. So I'm gonna pass that along because it's a little bit older. I feel like somebody else can really enjoy that. I'm gonna pass this one along too. It's the Pretty Fly Cream Melt from Doll Beauty. This again is very nice. Like it does a decent job. It's kind of a stiffer, kind of gelish formula that's not sticky. And what makes this really kind of unique is that it has that almost gold pigmentation in it. It's really nice. It's not too dissimilar to the one from Ulta Beauty. The thing is, because it's so similar to the Say Glow Sculpt, I would reach for that more than I would reach for this. I think the pigmentation, like the base pigment on those Say blushes is so much nicer than this. If this was in like a deeper shade, I might like it. But yeah, I think the Say is just where it's at for a very similar product, and I will reach for that one 10 out of 10. It's also a similar shade. So that one can go somewhere else. Then I have one from Rowan. This is the Cream Blush in Natural Rose. This is nice. I have traveled with this particular product. This is just a stickier formula. I don't like have an affinity for overly sticky. Like I do enjoy dewy products. I just don't enjoy like stickiness like this. I mean, I won't set a blush down, and I just don't even feel like that's the purpose. When you're trying to get a dewy finish, you don't want to set it down. I have other blushes that are like similarly shaded to this, so I'm just gonna pass this along. I just know myself. I really want to reach for stuff that I love. So if I keep that, I'll feel guilty about it. So I don't want to do that. Then I have two blushes from Kiko Milano. These were the Velvet Touch Cream Blush Sticks. Two shades, one more mauve and one is a peachy shade. The more mauve shade is in 08. And then the more peachy shade is in 03. I did pick these up from Amazon. I want to say they're no more than like 10 bucks maybe. They're a nice formula. They're cream to powder. They dry down really, really nicely, but they lay on top of powder terribly. And depending upon what powder it is, they can pill up on the cheeks. So with these, I do have to work at it. I do have to lay these down before I powder or skip powdering my cheeks because of that reason. The reason I put them in the chopping block was because I wanted to see how they looked on the cheeks again, how easy they were to apply, get the whole experience going to decide, do I want to work to make these work? I do. I really enjoy these. I like these. I think that the blurred effect that they give on the skin, the fact that they last all day, that they're a buildable formula, that they're a cream to powder, and they're quite easy to work with so long as you're not laying them on top of powder. I think they're good, so I'm gonna hold on to those. I'm gonna go into the next one that I'm gonna throw on. This is the matte beauty blush one from Charlotte Tilbury in Pink Pop. I picked up 3 of the shades. I wanna say there's 4 now because she came out with that red one. But this wasn't a shade that I feel like I would get a whole ton of use out of. I picked this up originally because I wanted to review these on my channel, not necessarily because I loved every single shade that she launched. I don't have the reddest one. The reason this ended up in the chopping block, not because of formula, because I'm a huge fan of the formula. Even if others aren't, I am. I really enjoy this. I find it very simple. I think it lasts all day. I get along with this and enjoy it very much. It was because I know I don't reach for shades like that very often. So I was like, all right, I need to test this again, put it on my cheeks and see how it turns out. Coincidentally, it's probably around the same time that I'm reaching for more pinky blushes, whereas last year I was reaching for all orange blushes, very peach blushes, not pink at all. I love this product though. I think it's super easy. It lasts all day. If you don't like this, like over the other ones, I totally understand. Or if you're just not into this formula in general, I don't think it's like, fully dried down. Like it's not a liquid to powder. It kind of has a little bit of tackiness to it. I don't think it's like fully matte, but I think I would be upset if it was too matte. Sometimes overly matte blushes tend to look flat and I don't like that. I think this one gives dimension and I realized I love this shade. So for that reason, she's definitely staying. I'm enjoying using that again, actually. And then I have one that you guys probably have never heard of before. This is the Primrose and Cream Lip and Chic Cream Palette from Seraphine Botanicals. I did get this in a BoxyCharm and I loved it when I first got it. But I haven't reached for it in so long that I was like, do I really still love this? It's intensely pigmented. It does come with 3 different and unique shades and I really like that. I wanted to see if it still performed and it does. It's so good. It's so pigmented. This is one of my longest lasting cream formulas. Seraphine Botanicals, when I looked them up, turned out to be a really expensive brand. I want to say this little palette was like almost $40 or something. It's not cheap. I thought it was going to be less expensive than this. So I wouldn't go out of my way, I think, to buy this formula again, but it's so good. It's kind of like thin like a balm, but intense in opacity and pigmentation. If that makes sense. It's just a super easy formula to work with that locks down on your cheeks all freaking day. I don't know if I'll end up panning that one. I just know that I don't want to get rid of it because I do enjoy it so much. This shade right here is just kind of unique in my collection too. I really like the way that looks on the cheeks. It's not too terracotta. It's kind of like this neutrally brown that just looks really flattering. So I'm gonna hold on to it. Another one I'm gonna hold on to is the Inner Glow Cream Pigment from Rituel de Fille. This is in the shade Desire. The reason this one went into my chopping block was because it's again one of those stickier formulas. It reminds me very much of the Rowan one and it has a really strong, what I refer to as eucalyptus scent. The thing is, I don't have any other shade like this. None that is this cool toned purple without looking too deep on my skin tone. Can't let it go. Can't let it go. I literally don't have any other shade like this. Even if it looks similar in the pan, there's nothing this cool toned that I've got that goes onto my cheeks that doesn't look gray. So it has to stay. It has to stay. I actually grew to love that more than I thought I would. This one as well. This one is from Unique Beauty. They still have this shade available as well on their website. Of course, I'll be linking all of these products below. So this one is in Danikil. They don't have all the shades that they originally launched in their line, but they do have this one last time that I checked. The reason this went into the chopping block, again, I think was because of this shade. It's like a neon. Oh, but it's so good. And it's really, really intense. You really have to go in with a light hand with this. And it's not the easiest thing to blend out. You know, if you go in too heavy with the swatch, like it's a little bit tricky to blend out. The thing is though, this shade is just something else. There is nothing like this in my collection that's this intense. So I was retesting this with a really fluffy brush and just like sweeping it onto the cheeks like I was a little princess. And it was freaking gorgeous. Oh, so stunning. So less is more with this, but still, it serves a purpose. quite unique. The next one that I have is from Dior. It's one of their Rosy Glow blushes. This one is in the 004 Coral shade. I have talked about these not being my favorite many times on my channel. The pink shade for sure is not my preference. And when everyone was going crazy, I felt like it was more of a shade thing than it was a formula thing. So even though I picked up the 001 pink, I decluttered it. I picked this one up when it came out because I was like, finally, that's a shade I can get along with, not that 001. But I was never overly impressed with the formula. I always thought it was a little bit dry and a little bit hard pressed in the pan. The more that you get through the imprint, I feel like the better this product performs. But I really enjoy this for a really buildable formula. Like, these shades are not terribly dissimilar. Like, if I diffused this shade out or went in with a really light hand with that blush, it ends up looking very similar to this one. But this one gives me like the effect if I was just trying to sheer this one out. I just enjoyed it is the bottom line. I really liked how light and fluffy it looked on the cheeks. I just don't think it's overly long lasting, but I think I'll get some use out of it. I just don't know if I have as many of this shade in my collection as I think I do. I think I have fewer of this shade now than I used to. So I don't know, both of these have a purpose even though they're kind of similarly toned. All right, I just threw on the new lip vinyl from Tarte in the shade Shimmering Raspberry. I tested it yesterday. I want to say it was yesterday, but I didn't get to keep it on because I was testing other lip products, so I wanted to throw it on. And I thought it would look good with the pink that we have going here. There's 3 more blushes and all 3 of them are staying. So the first one that I have is from Simi Haze. This is the Solar Tint Blush Duo in the shade Tropic. It has 2 different formulas in here, or finishes. One is the more matte side, and then this side over here is dewy. I actually really liked this product. I didn't hear anyone really talking about it too much when it came to Sephora. This is a stickier formula in terms of the dewy finish side, but it's still really nice. They have good opacity, good longevity. They perform like distinctly different. And I kind of like having a duo like this. I like this shade too. I enjoy this product. Again, I've literally heard no one talking about these on YouTube, anyone that I watched, and I quite enjoyed a lot of the Simi Haze products, even though, you know, it's Simi Haze and maybe people don't like the brand. I really enjoyed this. I think the reason that I threw this in here is because it's just an overlooked product in my collection, but paring it down is gonna help me too, and retesting things now is gonna help me, I think, in making decisions about what's gonna get rotated into my collection. So I could definitely see myself using this again in the upcoming months, especially during like spring and summertime. It's a really pretty product. It performs really well. So yeah, I think I'll end up rotating that in just a couple of months here. This one from Too Faced was one of 2 that I had in my collection. I got the original very pink shade when the Candy Clouds collection dropped that came with the eyeshadow and highlighter as well. But then they moved these into the permanent line and launched a ton of other shades. This is the Blurring Blush in Velvet Crush. I picked this shade up because that pink shade I got just to test in the video, but it was not a shade that I would normally wear. I don't really like those kind of baby pink shades. They look too translucent on my cheek and they kind of make me look flushed and ill. That's kind of how I feel about it. But this is more of a shade that I would get along with. I retested this because I wasn't such a huge fan of the formula. Not something that I really run into, which is this was a little bit powdery on the cheeks and uneven. It was getting a little bit patchy on my cheeks. I almost never find that with powder products. Not dissimilar to kind of learning how to use the Kiko Milano blushes that I figured out how to use this one. I just can't use a really fluffy brush with this. I need to use something a little bit more dense. And so I was like really coating every kind of inch of the brush and then really kind of tapping it onto the cheeks. And in that way, it's not patchy for me. Maybe it's just my blush too, because I don't remember the other one being patchy, but I really like this shade though. I'm reaching for a ton of shades like this recently. This more mauve-y kind of cool tonedness. So I actually really like this. I'm gonna hold on to that one. And I'm also gonna hold on to this little delight. This is the Cloud Paint from Glossier in the shade Dusk. A ton of formulas have come out, have just made these somewhat obsolete. I don't hear a ton of people talking about these, but these are gorgeous. They're not sticky, but they're opaque. They're super easy to work with. they're really well-performing products that last a nice amount of time on the cheeks. And I feel like the shade's pretty unique in my collection. It's like this neutrally peach. No, it's not neutrally peach. It's a beigey peach is what it looks like to me. It just is good. Again, something I need to rotate through my collection because I just think these perform really well that I don't want to ignore it and let it go bad. I really do want to get some use out of this. So I'm going to hold on to that. And then I had 2 highlighters. So the first one that I'm going to hold on to is the one from MAC. It's the Extra Dimension Skin Finish in Double Gleam. I want to say I picked this up in a 21 Days of Beauty Ulta sale 2 sales ago. And I forget about this. And that's why I pulled it into the chopping block initially. It wasn't a standout highlighter in my collection, but after the year that I had last year in retesting or just testing new products and new formulas in general, I really find that like trusty, simple products that just don't have a ton of frills are really what I'm looking for. And I think that's what this is. And I didn't understand that. Just because you don't think of something because it's simple, it's good, it's a pretty like workhorse kind of product, doesn't mean that it's bad. This is the kind of thing that I really like. Not glittery, gives me pretty intense gleam, pretty long lasting. It's a workhorse. That's what it is. It's good quality, no frills. And that's what I'm looking for right now. Don't get me wrong, like I like frills occasionally. When I'm getting ready every single day, sometimes it's just about that simple. You know, how quick can you get it on in a low maintenance kind of way that's gonna last you for the agenda you have for that day. I've just come to really enjoy products like that instead of like, oh my gosh, this is so glittery. The very final product that I have, you guys, and I hope you're hanging on in there because this is a really long video, I am sure. And if you are, you guys, thank you. I hope you are enjoying, but I appreciate all of you who watch my videos. But the final product I have is the Super Shock Cheek from ColourPop in Lunch Money. I have 2 of these. I also have a really popular one. I forget the shade now. I'm sure you guys will know what I'm talking about. I like this one, but I just don't love it over the other one that I have. I feel like this one just looks like a little bit more flat on the cheeks. Do you guys see it like compared to MAC? That MAC has no glitters, but more sheen. It's a little bit more icy. I don't know, there's just something about this formula that just looks a little bit flat when I get it on. Or maybe it's the shade, I guess. And it doesn't last a super long time on me. It fades pretty easily throughout the day. It just doesn't seem to lock down. If you guys saw me like move it all about my hand, it kind of just keeps moving. And that's how I feel like it kind of performs because it is like a cream product. And I prefer the other shade more. And you know, highlighters, there's a ton of other formulas in my collection that I just prefer more than this. So I'm gonna let this one go. I'm gonna pass that along. Anyway, you guys, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're not currently subscribed, I would love to see you subscribe so you can stick around. I'm out of here and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Bye guys.